Commander Zekthara stood in the cold metal chamber of the Valdorian warship, staring at his reflection in the polished surface. Soon, that reflection would change completely. The biomimetic device attached to his arm hummed with energy, ready to transform his gray-scaled skin and 4 arms into the pale flesh and 2 limbs of a human. "Remember your mission," Admiral Korthax said from behind him. "These humans are nothing more than lucky primitives. They found some old technology and think they can fight real warriors. You will show us how weak they truly are." Zekthara nodded slowly. He had heard the stories about humans for months now. They were supposed to be soft creatures who lived short lives and had no real understanding of war. The Valdorian Empire had been expanding across the galaxy for 1,000 years, crushing every species that dared to resist. Humans would be no different. "The human you will become is called Jake Morrison," the Admiral continued. "He was a supply officer who died in the last battle. No one will question your identity if you stay quiet and do your job." The transformation began with a sharp pain that shot through Zekthara's body. His bones shifted and shortened. His extra arms dissolved into his torso. His proud warrior crest flattened against his skull until it disappeared completely. When the process finished, he looked exactly like the dead human in the files. 3 hours later, Zekthara found himself on a transport ship heading toward the human base on Kepler 442b. The other passengers were human soldiers, returning from leave. They talked and laughed easily, showing none of the discipline he expected from warriors. Some even slept during the journey, something no Valdorian would do when entering a war zone. "First time on the front?" asked a young human sitting next to him. The name tag on his uniform read Williams. "Yes," Zekthara replied carefully, trying to match the human accent he had studied. "Don't worry, Morrison. The base is pretty safe. Colonel Bennett runs a tight ship, but she takes care of her people. You picked a good unit to transfer into." Zekthara filed this information away. So the humans trusted their leaders enough to sleep peacefully. Either they were incredibly foolish, or their leaders were more competent than Valdorian intelligence suggested. He suspected it was foolishness. The transport landed at forward operating Base Crimson just as the sun was setting. Zekthara expected to see a chaotic mess of frightened humans running around without purpose. Instead, he found something that surprised him. The base was organized and clean. Soldiers moved with clear objectives. Vehicles were properly maintained and positioned for quick deployment. A tall human woman approached the new arrivals. Her uniform was clean but warm, suggesting she worked hard but maintained standards. The rank insignia marked her as Colonel Bennett, the base commander. "Welcome to FOB Crimson," she said to the group. "I know you're tired, but we need to get you settled quickly. The situation here changes fast, and I want everyone ready for action within 24 hours. She assigned each soldier to their quarters and duties with efficient precision. When she reached Zekthara, she looked him directly in the eyes. For a moment, he worried that she could somehow see through his disguise. "Morrison, you'll be working with Sergeant Cooper in supply logistics. We need someone who can keep track of ammunition and medical supplies. Lives depend on having the right materials in the right place at the right time." "Yes, ma'am," Zekthara replied. Colonel Bennett studied him for another moment, then nodded. "Get some rest. Tomorrow starts early around here." The quarters Zekthara was assigned were small but functional. His roommate was a young human named Pete, who worked in communications. Pete welcomed him warmly and immediately began explaining how things worked at the base. "The colonel is tough but fair," Pete said while organizing his gear. "She came up through the ranks, so she understands what regular soldiers go through. Major Rodriguez handles most of the tactical planning, and she's brilliant. Captain Williams manages air support coordination. Everyone here knows their job and does it well. This casual respect for leadership puzzled Zekthara. In Valdorian culture, soldiers feared their commanders and followed orders without question. These humans seemed to actually like their officers, while still maintaining military discipline. It was a contradiction he could not understand. The next morning began before dawn with a base-wide alert. Zekthara expected chaos as unprepared humans stumbled around in confusion. Instead, he watched soldiers rapidly but calmly move to their assigned positions. No one panicked. No one needed to be shouted at or threatened. They simply did what needed to be done. Sergeant Danny Cooper found Zekthara in the supply depot and immediately put him to work. Cooper was a middle-aged human with tired eyes but steady hands. He explained the supply system with patience and detail, making sure Zekthara understood how critical their work was to the base's survival. "See, Morrison, it's not glamorous work, but it matters," Cooper said while checking inventory lists. "When Captain Williams calls for missile reloads, we need to have them ready in minutes, not hours. When Dr. Carter needs medical supplies for wounded soldiers, we can't tell her to wait until next week." Throughout the morning, Zekthara observed the humans working around him. They maintained equipment carefully, checked and double-checked important systems, and helped each other solve problems without being ordered to do so. Their technology was not as advanced as Valdorian equipment, but they used it more efficiently than he expected. The most surprising thing was how the humans treated each other. Valdorian warriors competed constantly for status and honor. These humans seemed to understand that their survival depended on cooperation. When someone made a mistake, others helped fix it instead of using it as an opportunity for advancement. During lunch, Zekthara sat with a group of soldiers and listened to their conversations. They talked about their families, their hopes for the future, and their concerns about the war. They showed pictures of children and spouses, shared stories about their homes, and supported each other through difficult emotions. It was completely different from the cold professionalism he knew in Valdorian military culture. "You're pretty quiet, Morrison," observed a female soldier named Kate. "Everything okay?" "Just trying to learn how things work here," Zekthara replied honestly. "Don't worry, you'll figure it out. This is a good unit. We look out for each other." That afternoon brought Zekthara's first real test. An urgent supply request came in from an outpost under enemy surveillance. The mission required someone to drive supplies through potentially dangerous territory. Cooper asked for volunteers, and several hands went up immediately, including Zekthara's own. "Morrison, you just got here. You don't need to volunteer for the dangerous stuff yet," Cooper said. "I want to do my part," Zekthara replied, surprising himself with how much he meant it. Cooper studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, you'll ride with Williams. Pay attention to everything he does. Your life might depend on it someday." As Zekthara prepared for his first mission with the humans, he realized that everything he had been told about them might be wrong. These were not weak, frightened primitives. They were organized, disciplined, and surprisingly brave. The question that troubled him was simple. If Valdorian intelligence was wrong about human courage and competence, what else were they wrong about? The alarm woke Zekthara from deep sleep at 3 a.m. Red lights flashed throughout the base as soldiers rushed to their battle stations. This was it. The Valdorian attack he had been expecting since his arrival 2 weeks ago. He should have felt excited to see his own people finally crush these weak humans. Instead, he felt something strange in his stomach that he could not name. "All hands to defensive positions." Colonel Bennett's voice echoed through the speakers. "This is not a drill. Enemy forces detected on approach vector 77 Alpha. Estimated contact in 15 minutes. Zekthara followed the other soldiers as they moved quickly but calmly to their assigned positions. No one screamed or panicked. No one ran around confused. They moved like water flowing downhill, each person knowing exactly where to go and what to do. It reminded him of the elite Valdorian guard units, not the frightened primitives he expected to find. Sergeant Cooper appeared beside him, carrying 2 rifles. "Morrison, you're with me in the supply bunker. If the perimeter falls, we'll need to get ammunition to the fallback positions fast." Through the reinforced windows of the bunker, Zikthara watched the human defenders prepare for battle. Captain Pete Williams coordinated with the air defense teams, his voice steady and professional over the radio. Major Amy Rodriguez moved between defensive positions, checking readiness and adjusting plans based on incoming intelligence. These humans showed no fear, only focused determination. "Contact in 60 seconds, Williams announced over the communication system. "Remember, we've trained for this. Trust your equipment, trust your training, and trust each other." The first Valdorian fighters appeared as bright streaks across the dark sky. Zikthara felt his heart's pound as he recognized the attack formation. It was the standard assault pattern used to break primitive defenses quickly. The lead fighters would strike the main defensive positions, while the heavy bombers followed to destroy any remaining resistance. He had seen this tactic work perfectly against dozens of species, but something went wrong almost immediately. The human air defenses opened fire with precise timing, creating overlapping fields of destruction that the Valdorian pilots had not expected. 3 fighters exploded in brilliant flashes before they could deliver their payloads. The remaining attackers broke formation, trying to avoid the deadly accurate fire from below. "Good shooting, air defense," Rodriguez's voice came over the radio. "Keep them scattered. Don't let them regroup." Zikthara watched in growing amazement as the human defenders adapted to each new Valdorian tactic. When the enemy fighters tried to approach from different angles, Williams redirected the air defense systems to cover the new threat vectors. When Valdorian ground forces tried to advance under cover of smoke, Rodriguez had already positioned soldiers with thermal imaging equipment to track them. The battle continued for 3 hours, but it became clear within the first 30 minutes that the Valdorian attack was failing. The humans were not just surviving, they were winning. Every move the attackers made seemed to be anticipated and countered. It was like watching a master chess player defeat a child who thought he understood the game. "How do they know what we're going to do before we do it?" One of the Valdorian pilots screamed over the communication channel that Zikthara could still access through his hidden equipment. "They're reading our tactics like an open book," another voice replied. "It's like they've fought us before." But that was impossible. This was the first major engagement between Valdorian and human forces in this sector. How could the humans know so much about Valdorian military doctrine? Zikthara felt his certainty about human ignorance crumbling like sand. The most shocking moment came when Valdorian ground forces managed to breach the outer perimeter. Zikthara expected the human defense to collapse once enemy soldiers got inside their lines. Instead, he watched the defenders execute a planned withdrawal to secondary positions, drawing the attackers into carefully prepared kill zones. "Phase 2 initiated," Bennett announced calmly. "All units execute fallback Protocol 7. The humans moved like they had practiced this exact scenario hundreds of times. Each team knew when to retreat, where to go, and how to support the other units. During the withdrawal, the advancing Valdorian soldiers found themselves surrounded and cut off from their support, exactly as the human commanders had planned. What happened next made Zikthara question everything he believed about warfare and honor. The trapped Valdorian soldiers were given a chance to surrender, not killed immediately as enemies deserved, but offered the opportunity to lay down their weapons and be treated as prisoners. Many of his people chose to fight to the death rather than accept defeat, but some actually surrendered, and the humans kept their word. The prisoners were not executed or tortured. Instead, they were treated by the same medical staff that cared for wounded human soldiers. Zikthara watched through binoculars as Corman Kate Miller worked to save the life of a Valdorian warrior who had been trying to kill her just minutes before. Why are they helping the enemy? He asked Cooper, who was monitoring the battle from their position. Cooper looked at him strangely. They're wounded. Doesn't matter what side they're on once they're out of the fight. That's just how we do things. This concept made no sense to Zikthara. In Valdorian culture, defeated enemies were either killed or enslaved. Showing mercy was considered weakness that would encourage further resistance. Yet these humans treated their prisoners with the same care they showed their own wounded. It was completely backwards from everything he had been taught about proper. Warfare. By dawn, the Valdorian attack had been completely defeated. 3/4 of the attacking force had been destroyed or captured. The human base remained fully operational with minimal damage and relatively few casualties. It was not just a victory. It was a demonstration of military competence that rivaled anything Zikthara had seen in his long career. As the humans began cleanup and recovery operations, Zikthara observed how they processed the aftermath of battle. They secured equipment, gathered intelligence from captured materials, and immediately began repairing any damage to their defenses. But they also did something he had never seen before. They held a ceremony to honor both their own dead and the enemy soldiers who had died fighting. Every warrior deserves respect, Chaplain Ryan Murphy said during the brief service. They fought bravely for what they believed in, even if we disagreed with their cause. We honor their courage while remaining committed to defending what we believe is right. The captured Valdorian soldiers listened to these words with confusion and something that might have been gratitude. Zikthara felt his own confusion growing deeper. How could a species show such strength in battle and such compassion afterward? It contradicted every lesson he had learned about the nature of warfare and conquest. That evening, as the base returned to normal operations, Zikthara found himself helping to inventory supplies that would be used to care for the prisoners. Cooper worked beside him, checking medical supplies and food rations without any sign of resentment toward the enemy soldiers who had tried to kill them. "Cooper," Zikthara said carefully, "don't you hate them for attacking us?" The sergeant paused in his work and considered the question seriously. "Hate takes too much energy, Morrison. They were doing their job, and we did ours. Now our job is to treat them right while they're in our custody. Hate won't help anyone. Heal." As Zikthara lay in his bunk that night, staring at the ceiling, he realized that everything the Valdorian Empire believed about humans was not just wrong, but dangerously incomplete. These were not weak primitives who had stumbled into advanced technology. They were sophisticated warriors who understood aspects of conflict that his own people had never considered. The question that kept him awake was terrifying in its implications. If the Valdorian Empire was this wrong about human military capabilities, what else were they wrong about? And what would happen when the full Valdorian fleet arrived, expecting to find easy prey instead of the formidable opponents he had witnessed? Today, 3 days had passed since the failed Valdorian attack, and Zikthara could not stop thinking about what he had witnessed. The images of human soldiers treating enemy prisoners with kindness haunted him. Everything he had been taught about warfare seemed wrong now. He needed answers, but asking too many questions might reveal his true identity. His opportunity came when Sergeant Cooper assigned him to work with Master Sergeant Tony Garcia in the base archives. Garcia was an older human with gray hair and scars on his hands that spoke of many battles. He had been fighting for over 20 years and knew more about military history than anyone else on the base. "Morrison, you seem confused about something. Garcia said as they organized supply records. You keep asking strange questions about why we do things the way we do. Zekthara felt a moment of panic. Had he been too obvious with his curiosity? I just want to understand how things work here. This is my first real combat assignment. Garcia studied him with knowing eyes. Son, I've trained a lot of new soldiers. Most of them ask about weapons and tactics. You ask about why we treat prisoners. Well, and why officers care about enlisted men. Those are deeper questions. Is that wrong? Not wrong at all. Shows you're thinking about the big picture. Garcia pulled out a thick book from a shelf. This is a history of human conflicts going back thousands of years. Want to know why we fight the way we do? Start reading. Over the next several days, Zekthara read everything he could find about human military history. What he discovered amazed and terrified him. Humans had been fighting wars for their entire recorded history, but not in the way Valdorians understood warfare. Each conflict taught them lessons that changed how they approached the next one. He learned about ancient human generals who won battles by understanding their enemies better than the enemies understood themselves. He read about wars where smaller, weaker forces defeated larger armies through better planning and innovation. Most importantly, he discovered that humans had a unique ability to learn from their mistakes and adapt their methods. The thing about humans, Garcia explained one afternoon while they worked, is that we never fight the same war twice. Every conflict teaches us something new. We study what worked, what failed, and what we can do better next time. But how do you learn so much from losing? Zekthara asked, thinking about Valdorian culture where defeat brought only shame. Losing teaches you more than winning sometimes. When you win, you might get lucky, or your enemy might make mistakes. When you lose, you have to figure out what went wrong and fix it, or you'll keep losing. This concept was revolutionary to Zekthara. Valdorian warriors who lost battles were punished or killed. Their failures were buried and forgotten rather than studied. How could humans become stronger by examining their weaknesses? His education continued when he met Lieutenant Emma Brooks, the base intelligence analyst. She was a young woman with bright eyes who seemed to know everything about Valdorian military tactics. When she learned that Zekthara was interested in military history, she invited him to observe her work. The interesting thing about your people, she said while studying Valdorian battle formations, is that they haven't changed their tactics in hundreds of years. They use the same approaches that worked against primitive species, but they don't adapt when they face more advanced opponents. Zekthara felt his blood turn cold. My people? The Valdorians. You know, the ones who attacked us 3 days ago. She looked at him strangely. Are you feeling okay, Morrison? You look pale. Just tired, he managed to say. Brooks continued her analysis, unaware of how her words affected him. Look at this attack pattern. It's identical to the one they used against the Corlin Confederation 50 years ago. Same formation, same timing, same support structure. It worked then because the Corlins had no air defense. But we studied their methods and prepared countermeasures. How did you know what they would do? Intelligence gathering and pattern analysis. The Valdorians are predictable because they never change. They have one way of fighting, and they use it against everyone. We have dozens of ways to fight, and we pick the one that works best against each enemy. That evening, Zekthara sought out Chaplain Ryan Murphy, the base spiritual counselor. He needed to understand something that puzzled him more than military tactics. Why did humans show mercy to their enemies? In Valdorian culture, strength came from dominating others. But these humans seemed to find strength in something else entirely. Father Murphy, he said carefully, why do we treat prisoners so well? Wouldn't it be easier to just execute them? Murphy looked at him with concern. That's a dark question, son. Are you having trouble with what you saw in the battle? I just don't understand the reasoning. Murphy sat down beside him on the chapel bench. Listen, Morrison. The way we treat our enemies says something about who we are as people. If we become cruel and heartless, we lose the very things we're fighting to protect. We don't fight because we enjoy killing. We fight to defend our families, our freedom, and our values. But showing mercy to enemies seems like weakness. That's where you're wrong. It takes strength to show mercy. Any fool can kill a helpless prisoner. It takes real courage to treat them with dignity while they're in your power. That's what separates civilized people from barbarians. These words stayed with Zekthara as he continued his investigation. He began to understand that human strength came not from superior technology or overwhelming force, but from something more fundamental. They fought not just to win, but to preserve something precious about themselves. His final revelation came during a conversation with Dr. Helen Carter, the base psychologist. She was treating both human soldiers and Valdorian prisoners for battle trauma, showing the same care to both groups. Zekthara found her in the medical bay, checking on a wounded Valdorian warrior who had lost his arm in the battle. "How is he doing?" Zekthara asked. "Better. The physical wound is healing well, but he's struggling with being captured. His culture teaches that capture is worse than death, so he feels ashamed and confused. What will happen to him? When he's healthy enough, he'll be transferred to a proper prisoner facility. We'll try to arrange prisoner exchanges when possible. He has a family back home who thinks he's dead. Getting him back to them would be the right thing to do." Zekthara stared at the sleeping Valdorian soldier. This warrior had tried to kill humans just days ago, yet they were working to reunite him with his family. It made no sense according to everything he had been taught about warfare and survival. "Dr. Carter, why do humans care so much about individual lives? Even enemy lives?" She considered the question seriously. "Because every person matters, Morrison. That Valdorian soldier isn't just an enemy. He's someone's son, maybe someone's father. He has hopes and fears just like we do. When we remember that our enemies are people too, we stay human ourselves. But doesn't that make you weak in war? Just the opposite. It makes us stronger. When our soldiers know we value every life, including their own, they fight harder to protect each other. When our enemies see that we treat prisoners well, some of them choose to surrender instead of fighting to the death. That saves lives on both sides." That night, Zekthara made a decision that would change everything. He accessed his hidden communication device and sent a message to Valdorian Command, but not the intelligence report they expected. Instead, he sent a warning. "The humans are not what we believed," he transmitted. "They are not weak primitives with lucky technology. They are sophisticated warriors who have been studying warfare for thousands of years. They adapt, they learn, and they fight with principles that make them stronger than us. The Empire must reconsider its approach." The response came within hours. "Agent compromised. Extraction team being dispatched. Maintain cover until arrival." Zekthara stared at the message and realized he faced an impossible choice. His own people were coming to get him, and they would not listen to his warnings about human capabilities. They would assume he had been brainwashed or turned traitor. The truth he had discovered about human strength and character would die with him, unless he chose to trust the humans he had come to respect and warn them about what was coming. But that would mean betraying his own species and everything he had believed about loyalty and duty. As he lay in his bunk that night, Zekthara knew that tomorrow would force him to decide who he really was and what he truly believed about honor, truth, and the meaning of real strength. The Valdorian extraction team arrived at dawn, moving through the forest around Fob Crimson like silent shadows. Zekthara watched them from the observation tower, where he was supposed to be on guard duty. His former subordinate, Commander Rafik, led the team of 6 elite warriors. They moved with the deadly precision he remembered from countless battles together. Zekthara's hands shook as he held his communication device. He could contact Rathvik right now, reveal his position, and extract safely back to the Valdorian fleet. His mission would be complete, even if his intelligence report would be ignored. He would return home as a loyal warrior who had done his duty. But he thought about Sergeant Cooper, who had shown him kindness without asking for anything in return. He remembered Major Rodriguez explaining tactical principles with patience and respect. He pictured Dr. Carter caring for wounded Valdorian prisoners as if they were her own people. These humans had become more than subjects of study. They had become something he never expected. Friends. The base alarm system remained silent. The humans had no idea that death was creeping toward them through the morning mist. Zekthara could warn them, but doing so would mark him as a traitor to his own species forever. There would be no going home, no return to the life he had known for 60 years. Morrison, everything okay up there? Sergeant Cooper's voice crackled through the radio. You're supposed to check in every 15 minutes. Zekthara closed his eyes and made his choice. Cooper, we have incoming hostiles. 6 targets moving through Sector 7. They're not human. What? How do you know they're not human? Trust me. Get Colonel Bennett. Tell her we have Valdorian Special Forces approaching the base. They're here for someone specific. The base erupted into controlled activity as the alarm sounded. Zekthara watched human soldiers move to defensive positions with the same calm efficiency he had witnessed during the previous attack. But this time was different. This time he was betraying his own people to protect theirs. Rathvik's voice crackled through his hidden communicator. Brother Zekthara, we know you are here. Reveal yourself, and we will extract you safely. Continue hiding, and we will take human hostages until you surrender. Colonel Bennett's voice came over the base communication system. All personnel, we have confirmed hostile infiltration. Unknown number of enemy special forces are attempting to capture or kill someone on this base. All units maintain defensive positions and wait for orders. Zekthara climbed down from the observation tower and walked toward the base headquarters. Each step felt like he was crossing an invisible line that could never be uncrossed. When he reached the command center, he found Bennett, Rodriguez, and Williams studying tactical displays and coordinating the defense. Colonel, he said quietly, I need to tell you something important. Bennett looked up from her maps. Morrison, you should be at your assigned position. My name is not Jake Morrison. Zekthara felt the biomimetic device on his arm and deactivated it. His human appearance dissolved, revealing his true gray-scaled form with 4 arms and a proud warrior crest. The humans in the room reached for their weapons, but did not fire. My real name is Commander Zekthara of the Valdorian Imperial Fleet. I came here to spy on your military capabilities. The team outside is here to extract me, or kill me if I have been compromised. The silence in the room was deafening. Major Rodriguez kept her hand on her sidearm, while Captain Williams moved to block the exit. Colonel Bennett studied Zekthara with cold, calculating eyes. Why are you telling us this? Bennett asked. Because everything my people believe about humans is wrong. You are not weak primitives. You are the most dangerous warriors I have ever encountered, not because of your weapons or your technology, but because of your principles and your ability to adapt. My people are going to attack your species with the full Imperial fleet, and they will lose because they do not understand what they are fighting. And you're willing to betray your own species to warn us? Zekthara thought about all the conversations he had shared with the humans over the past weeks, the kindness they had shown him when they thought he was one of them, the mercy they had given to his wounded people. the strength they found in caring for others instead of dominating them. I am not betraying them. I am trying to save them from their own ignorance. But first, I must help you survive what is coming right now. Rathvik's voice boomed across the base through external speakers. Humans of this facility, we have come for our missing operative. Surrender him to us, and we will leave peacefully. Resist, and we will take hostages until you comply. Bennett looked at Zekthara. What do they want with you? They think I have been turned against my own people by human psychological warfare. They cannot believe that I might have discovered the truth about human capabilities and chosen to act. On that knowledge, what's their tactical approach likely to be? Zekthara felt a strange pride in her question. Even facing an unknown enemy, she was thinking strategically rather than emotionally. They will try to take hostages to force a negotiation. Valdorian special forces are trained for quick strikes against inferior opponents, not prolonged battles against equals. Rodriguez Williams set up overlapping fields of fire in the main courtyard. If they want a fight, we'll give them one they won't expect. Zekthara, you're staying here where we can watch you. Colonel, let me help. I know their tactics, their equipment, their weaknesses. I can guide your defense. Why should we trust you? Because for the past 3 weeks, I have lived among you as one of your own. You have shown me what real strength looks like. Not the strength to conquer others, but the strength to remain honorable even when facing enemies. I want to earn that kind of strength for myself. The battle began when Rathvik led his team in a direct assault on the main gate. They expected to overwhelm the human defenders quickly and force a surrender. Instead, they found themselves facing coordinated defensive fire from multiple positions. The humans had set up the battlefield to channel the attackers into kill zones while protecting their own forces. Zekthara provided tactical advice that helped the defenders anticipate each Valdorian move. When Rathvik tried to flank through the motor pool, human soldiers were already waiting. When the Valdorians attempted to use smoke grenades for concealment, the defenders switched to thermal imaging systems. They're fighting like they know everything we're going to do, one of the Valdorian warriors reported over the communication channel. Because they do know, Rathvik replied grimly. Our missing operative has turned traitor. The final confrontation came when Rathvik, wounded and desperate, took Dr. Carter hostage in the medical bay. He held a blade to her throat while demanding that Zekthara surrender himself or watch the human die. Zekthara walked into the medical bay with his hands visible and empty. Brother Rathvik, let her go. Your quarrel is with me. You have brought shame upon our entire warrior caste, Rathvik snarled. These soft creatures have poisoned your mind with their weakness. They have shown me what real courage looks like. It takes no bravery to kill someone weaker than yourself. It takes great courage to show mercy to someone who wants to harm you. You speak like them now. You are lost. No, brother. For the first time in my life, I am found. The standoff ended when Dr. Carter used a medical technique she had learned from treating both human and Valdorian patients. She knew exactly where to pressure a nerve cluster on Rathvik's arm, causing him to drop his weapon in sudden pain. The human security forces moved in immediately to secure him as the surviving Valdorian commandos were taken into custody. Rathvik stared at Zekthara with a mixture of hatred and confusion. You have chosen exile and dishonor for these creatures. Was it worth it? Zekthara looked around at the humans who had accepted him despite his deception. Colonel Bennett nodded at him with something that might have been respect. Sergeant Cooper was already organizing medical care for the wounded. Valdorians. Dr. Carter was checking on everyone, human and alien alike, to make sure they were unharmed. Yes, he said finally. It was worth it. In the weeks that followed, Zekthara began his new life as an advisor to the human military. He helped them understand Valdorian tactics and technology while learning more about human principles. Strategies. When the full Valdorian fleet arrived months later, they found human forces prepared with countermeasures for every standard imperial tactic. The war that followed was unlike anything the Valdorian Empire had ever experienced. For the first time in their history of conquest, they faced an enemy that learned from every battle, adapted to every new challenge, and fought with a unity born from shared values rather than fear of punishment. Sikthara often stood on the observation deck of the human command ship, watching his former people struggle against opponents they still did not understand. He had tried to warn them, but they had chosen to believe in their own superiority rather than face uncomfortable truths. The humans had taught him that real strength came not from dominating others, but from the courage to change when change was needed. It was a lesson his people would learn eventually, but only after paying a terrible price for their stubborn pride.